I've given a lot of thought as to what my next step needs to be to finish this pack, and I've determined that I need to build the lid before I can move forward with building the main pack. I'll go into detail about why at a later time. There's a lot of different ways to make a backpack lid, ranging from simple designs like the Alice pack to much more complex ones. I feel like the lid gives the pack a lot of personality, and a well-made pack with an ugly lid is a little tragic. I've looked at a few packs to get ideas that I like to imitate, and one I keep coming back to is the Savada Jikari M. I'll try and remember to insert some screenshots of it when I edit this. I like the look of that lid on that pack, and I'd like to make something similar. I started by cutting out two side panels for the lid. To find the dimensions of this, I started with a rectangle that was about 7 inches across because the side of the bag is going to be 6 inches deep, and I added an extra ½ inch on either side for seam allowance, and about 2 inches down on one side. I went about an extra 3 inches on this side because this is going to be at the front of the lid, and I wanted the front of the lid to come down further than the back. And then I obviously just connected one side to the other, and on the top I just found a round object to trace. I think it ended up being like a salad bowl or something. And once I had that cut out, I just flipped it over, traced it on my material to cut out the other one. I actually already had a piece of material cut that will become this top panel for the lid, and it started off as the same dimensions as the back panel of the backpack. The reason being is because before I decided to purchase the orange 500 denier Cordura that would become the interior divider of the backpack, I was originally just planning on making it out of the same material as the exterior of the backpack, so I ended up cutting two pieces the same dimensions. Because the material was already cut to the same size as the back panel, it was already 13 inches wide because the backpack is going to be 12 inches wide, and then you have the extra ½ inch seam allowance on either side. To find the length that I needed, rather than try to do any complicated kind of math, I just kind of mocked it up by using clips to clip it to one of the side panels, and the excess that was hanging off of the front I just cut off. Now originally I was planning on having it tapered at the bottom of the front panel, but I forgot to leave extra material, so it's no big deal. It's just going to be, instead of being tapered, it'll just be flat all the way across. Like the Savada Jikari M, I wanted the lid to have a zippered pocket on the inside. I was trying to decide what to make this panel out of. This would be the interior of the lid. And I wanted it to help keep water out of the main compartment of the backpack. Obviously the Cordura is probably going to shed a little bit of water, but the wetter it gets, the more likely you are to get water inside of the backpack. So I wanted something that was going to help keep it a little bit more waterproof, and I ended up using this rubbery material that's actually part of a chemical protective footwear cover. It's like a military surplus item that I ended up finding in the trash, and I just cut the largest pieces I could get out of it, two large rectangular pieces out of it, connected them together by sewing them to a zipper. I will say that my machine had a lot of trouble getting through the zipper and 2 layers of this material that was folded over. and the stitching on it just turned out really ugly. Obviously my machine wasn't meant to be sewing through this type of material. I'm going to do the best I can to complete the lid because I still have to sew through it, the layer of cordura, and the grosgrain ribbon that's going to be around the outside of it. And at one point I'm going to have to sew through all that and the zipper. So we'll see how that turns out, if it's even possible. I've also got two lengths of 1-inch webbing here. They're about 5 foot in length. And you can see I've already used box X stitches to sew the female ends of these buckles to them, these side release buckles. These straps are going to be the compression straps that are going to go all the way around the bag, just like an Alice pack. I'm going to be attaching them to the lid first, which is why I need to finish creating the lid before I move on to the rest of the pack. They're going to be attached to the lid first. Once I complete the lid, they're also going to be attached to the back panel, and then the tag ends of these lengths of webbing are basically going to wrap all the way around the bag and then come back up and meet the other end of this buckle. One feature I wanted to add to this bag was to create attachment points on the top of the lid using these 1-inch metal rectangular rings. Basically all I did was put these on the 1-inch webbing and then take a bite, folded it over, and then just sewed a couple of bar tacks so that these are secured to the 1-inch webbing. The purpose of doing that is so that instead of using these compression straps as a way to secure an item to the top of the lid, like say a sleeping pad or something, I would just run a dedicated strap through these two attachment points and then around the object I wanted to secure to the lid. My next step moving forward is going to be to sew the compression straps to the exterior panel of the lid. I want to make sure I do that before I put the rest of the lid together because I don't want to sew through this interior panel. The way I've decided to do that is I originally was just going to sew several seams along the compression strap, but I've decided instead to just do several bar tacks along the compression strap, and that should create several extra attachment points to, say, attach a carabiner to the exterior of the lid. On top of that, it should just be a lot easier to do the bar tacks instead of sewing a seam along the outside here and then along the outside here. I want to point out that I've left about 6.5 inches of material in between the two compression straps, and the reason I went with those dimensions instead of moving them in a little bit closer like I originally wanted was so that the compression straps would fall in between the loops of the PALS webbing that's going to be on the front of the bag. One possibility that I toyed with early on but ultimately decided not to do was to add PALS webbing to the exterior of the lid, and I thought maybe it would look cool, but ultimately I probably wouldn't use it. I don't think I would ever attach any sort of molly pouch or anything like that to the exterior of the lid. Just an update on my progress. I've finished sewing the two compression straps to the exterior of the lid using several bar tacks, as I stated I was going to do. And I also put the exterior and interior panels together and put a seam along each side. That way the two panels will be easier to keep together as I go along with the next step, which is going to be to attach the two side panels.